Jack Miller's hands were already black with grease by 8 a.m., the Florida sun beating down on the corrugated metal roof of Eddie's Auto Repair. The garage was small, just 3 bays and a cracked vending machine that hadn't worked since 2019. But it was home. Jack had worked there for over a decade. Not because the pay was great, but because he loved engines. Loved solving problems most people didn't even understand. And mostly because he didn't ask for much. He was in the middle of replacing a timing belt on a battered Toyota Camry when a sleek black Range Rover rolled into the lot. The paint shimmered. The engine purred. Jack barely glanced up until he saw who stepped out. Tom Brady. Jack's jaw tightened. The GOAT. The legend. The guy who had brought Tampa Bay a Super Bowl just a few years back. In a plain white t-shirt and jeans, Tom looked more like a dad picking up groceries than one of the most famous athletes in the world. "Morning," Tom said, walking up casually. Jack wiped his hands on a dirty rag, trying not to look like he was freaking out. "Hey, something wrong with the car?" "Yeah, I think the alternator's going. Battery light came on halfway here." Jack nodded. "Pop the hood." As he worked, Tom leaned against the garage door, chatting like any regular guy. He asked about Jack's work, his favorite team growing up, even cracked a joke about how brutal. The Florida heat was in the summer. Jack was cool on the outside, but inside he was stunned. Not just because he was working on Tom Brady's car, but because the man was so normal. 20 minutes later, Jack closed the hood. "You're good to go. Just a loose connection on the alternator. No charge." Tom raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Jack nodded. "Wouldn't feel right charging someone for a 5-minute fix, especially someone who brought us a ring." Tom smiled, shook his hand, and said, "You're a good man, Jack." Jack watched him drive off, still in disbelief. He didn't even take a picture, didn't ask for a selfie. Just did the right thing. But the next morning, that decision would cost him everything. Jack showed up to work the next morning like any other day. Coffee in hand, uniform shirt a little wrinkled, hair still damp from a rushed shower. He didn't expect applause for helping Tom Brady. Truth was, he hadn't even told anyone. To him, it was just a 5-minute favor for someone he respected. Nothing more. But Eddie, the shop owner, was waiting at the front, arms crossed. "We need to talk," Eddie said, his voice low and flat. Jack followed him to the office. Still, half asleep. He figured maybe there'd been a customer complaint, maybe a mistake on a ticket. But when Eddie closed the door, Jack knew it was serious. "You fixed Tom Brady's car yesterday?" Jack blinked. "Yeah. He rolled in, had a loose connection, took me 10 minutes. I didn't think—" "You didn't charge him?" "No. It was nothing. I mean, come on, it's Tom Brady." Eddie's face went red. "I don't care if it's the Pope. You don't give free work to millionaires, especially not from my garage. You made me look like a fool." Jack stood there stunned. It wasn't about money, it was just the right thing to do. "Well, here's my right thing. Pack your shit. You're done." The silence hit harder than the words. Jack's stomach twisted. "You're firing me? Over this? I can't afford mechanics who give charity to rich guys while I'm paying the bills. You think he's going to remember you? You think he's going to come back and say thank you?" Jack didn't answer. There was no point. He walked out of the office in a daze, the Florida heat slapping him in the face like reality. His coworkers avoided eye contact. Nobody said a word. He emptied his locker, tossed his gloves in a plastic bag, and drove home, in silence. At home, his wife Rachel was folding laundry on the couch when he walked in early. "Everything okay?" "I got fired," Jack said, barely above a whisper. She froze, towel in hand. "What? Why?" He told her everything. From Brady's visit to Eddie's reaction. She didn't yell. She just stared, trying to process it. "You did the right thing," she finally said. Jack nodded, but it didn't feel like it, not yet. 2 days had passed since Jack lost his job. He tried to stay busy, mowed the lawn, fixed the kitchen faucet, even organized the garage, which hadn't been touched in years. But none of it quieted the noise in his head. The silence of not working was louder than the sound of drills and engines ever were. Rachel picked up extra shifts at the diner. She didn't complain, but Jack saw the worry in her eyes. Their son, Ethan, noticed too. He was only 10 but smart enough to understand that something was off. On Friday morning, Jack sat at the dining table sipping coffee when Rachel came rushing in holding her phone. "You need to see this." He took the phone. There it was. A tweet from some local reporter. Mechanic in Tampa fired for fixing Tom Brady's car for free. Boss says no favors for millionaires. Attached was a blurry photo of Jack outside the shop. Someone must have snapped it as he walked out. That day, his name was trending. There were thousands of comments. Some were angry. This guy gets fired for being a decent human, unreal. Imagine punishing kindness, what a joke. Others were suspicious. Bet this was all planned for attention. Who turns down money from Tom Brady unless there's a camera around? Jack felt his stomach twist. How the hell did this get out? Rachel scrolled. Some customer was there, said he recognized Brady and saw you fixing the car. Posted it to Reddit, it exploded. He stood up and started pacing. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want... I know, she said gently. But it's out now. By afternoon, local, news vans were parked on their street. A reporter knocked at their door. Jack refused to speak. He didn't want to be some story. He just wanted his job back, or at least his normal life. But by nightfall, it was on national TV. Talk shows were debating it. Celebrities were tweeting. Hashtags like Jordan Good Guy Jack and Fired for Kindness were everywhere. Jack sat on the couch, Ethan curled beside him, watching strangers argue about his life on TV. He still hadn't heard a word from Tom Brady, but that was about to change. It was Sunday morning, and Jack hadn't slept well. The noise online had only gotten louder. A clip of a sports anchor defending him had gone viral overnight. There were memes, interviews, heated debates. And still, Jack hadn't spoken to a single journalist. He didn't want the spotlight, but the spotlight wanted him. Around 10 a.m., Rachel came into the living room holding Jack's phone. "Unknown number," she said, handing it over. Jack hesitated. If it's another reporter. But when he answered, the voice on the other end caught him completely off guard. "Hey, is this Jack?" "It's Tom." "Tom Brady." Jack froze. He didn't respond right away. It didn't sound like an assistant. It sounded like him. Yeah," Jack finally said. "It's me. I just saw what happened. Man, I had no idea. I feel terrible." Jack ran a hand through his hair. "Wasn't your fault?" "No, but I should have called sooner. I didn't even know your name until I saw it on ESPN. You didn't even tell me that day, you just helped." There was a pause. "I wanted to thank you, Jack. And I'd like to meet. In person." Jack blinked. "For what?" "I've got something in mind. It's nothing shady, I promise. But you deserve better than to get canned for doing a good thing." They arranged to meet that evening. Neutral ground, private. A friend of Tom's owned a quiet steakhouse near the water. No press, no cameras. Just a conversation. When Jack walked into the dim wood-paneled restaurant, Tom was already at a corner booth, dressed casual, sipping iced tea like any regular guy. They shook hands. "I still don't know what to say," Jack admitted. Tom smiled. "You don't have to say anything, I just want to help." He slid a folded piece of paper across the table. Jack opened it. A check. The amount made his chest tighten. "I can't take this," Jack said immediately. "You didn't charge me. I'm just balancing the scale." Jack shook his head. "This isn't why I did it." "I know," Tom said. "That's why you should take it." Jack didn't answer right away. He looked out the window, the sky glowing orange as the sun dropped behind the bay. He didn't know it then, but that dinner would be the beginning of a whole new chapter, one far more complicated than he ever imagined. By Monday morning, the check from Tom was locked in Jack's desk drawer, untouched. He hadn't told anyone the amount, not even Rachel. She didn't push. They both knew what it represented. Not just gratitude, but pressure. Taking it might make people think he did the whole thing for that reward. Refusing it? Maybe he looked ungrateful. There was no winning in the court of public opinion. That week, Jack's phone didn't stop buzzing. A PR agency emailed offering to manage his brand. A national parts retailer wanted to make him the face of their new campaign, built on integrity. An influencer with 5 million followers invited him to a podcast, and a local politician even reached out, asking him to endorse their small business initiative. Rachel watched him sift through offers at the kitchen table, a knot forming between his brows. "You okay?" she asked. Jack looked up, exhausted. "I fixed a guy's alternator, Rach. That's all I did." She smiled gently. "Yeah. But you did it in a world where no one expects kindness anymore. That's what made it big." He nodded, but inside, he wasn't sure if that was a good thing. The story no longer belonged to him. It was being repackaged, reposted, turned into content, and everyone seemed to want a piece. Even old coworkers were reaching out, some supportive, some suddenly full of praise after years of ignoring him. Then came the interview request from Good Morning America. "Jack, this is national television," the producer said. "We'd love to fly you and your family out to New York. Tell your story. Inspire people." It sounded tempting, but Jack hesitated. He wasn't an actor. He wasn't looking for fame. He just wanted to work on cars, pay his bills, and raise his son right. Still, Rachel encouraged him. "You don't have to perform, just be yourself. That's what people connected with." So he agreed. But just before they were set to leave, a message popped up on social media. It was a video posted by a former coworker. "Funny how Jack didn't charge Tom Brady wine, but now he's out here making money off it. Guess kindness pays, huh?" The post spread fast. In one night, the narrative shifted from humble mechanic to media opportunist. Jack closed his laptop, heart sinking. For the first time, he wondered if doing the right thing had been worth it. The plane tickets were canceled. Jack didn't go on Good Morning America. After that video from his former coworker took off, the tone online turned fast. The same strangers who once praised him were now accusing him of selling out. Another fake hero. Guess integrity has a price tag after all. Knew it was a PR stunt from day one. The hate hit harder than Jack expected. Not because he cared what people thought, but because deep down he feared they might be right. He hadn't spent the check, hadn't signed any deals. But he had entertained them. He'd answered the calls, he'd taken the meetings, and that made him feel dirty. Rachel noticed the change. He wasn't eating much. He hardly slept. Even Ethan picked up on it. "You're not in trouble, right?" the boy asked one night at dinner. Jack forced a smile. "No, buddy, just tired of being in the middle of something I didn't ask for." A few days later, he drove across town to a small shop run by an old friend, Mike, who ran a one-man garage on the edge of Tampa. No flashy signs, no PR campaigns, just oil, tools, and grit. Mike opened the garage door and gave him a look. "Didn't expect you here." Jack shrugged. "Didn't expect to be here." They didn't talk much. Jack grabbed a wrench, rolled up his sleeves, and helped him change a water pump. For the first time in weeks, his hands were covered in grease again, and for a moment he felt like himself. When they finished, Mike tossed him a cold soda. "People talk. Let 'em. Just don't let it change who you are." Jack nodded, grateful. That night he sat with Rachel on the porch. The air was warm. The sky was clear. "I don't want to be famous," he said quietly. "Then don't," she replied. "But don't hide either. Just be Jack." He took a deep breath. "I want to open my own place. No sponsors, no camera crews. Just a real garage, honest work." She didn't hesitate. "Then let's figure out how." For the first time in weeks, Jack slept through the night. The noise hadn't gone away. But inside, something had shifted. He was done reacting to what people thought. Now he was going to do something that felt real, from the ground up. Jack had never filled out a business license before. The paperwork alone gave him a headache. Zoning permits, insurance, equipment sourcing, He wasn't even sure where to start. But Rachel, with her server's grit and stubborn optimism, helped him take it one form at a time. They sold their second car, dipped into savings they'd been building for Ethan's future, and borrowed a small amount from Rachel's sister, just enough for a beat-up lease on a garage space in East Tampa. It wasn't pretty. The roof leaked, the floor was stained, and the front sign still had the name of the last failed business painted over in faded red. But it was his. "Miller's Auto," Rachel said, standing in front of the building with a paintbrush in hand. "Has a good ring to it." They scrubbed walls. They patched the roof with second-hand materials. Mike dropped off a set of old but reliable tools, free of charge. Ethan helped paint the interior on weekends, blasting music from his phone while Jack showed him how to organize sockets by size. They opened 2 weeks later with no fanfare. No influencers, no ribbon cutting, just a chalkboard sign out front. Honest work, fair prices, open now. At first the customers came slow, a neighbor with a busted AC unit, a delivery driver who needed new brake pads. Word started to spread, not through viral posts or news coverage, but through the kind of trust that spreads table to table, porch to porch. One afternoon, Jack was under a lifted Chevy when someone called out from the entrance. "Place looks solid, Jack." He slid out and looked up. Tom Brady. In sunglasses and a plain t-shirt, he walked in like any other customer. Jack stood, wiping his hands, surprised but smiling. "You need something fixed?" Jack asked. Tom laughed. "Just checking in. Heard you went legit." Jack looked around. "Still learning as I go." Tom nodded, impressed. "That check still sitting in a drawer?" Jack gave him a look. "Still untouched." Tom grinned. "Then you're doing it right." They shook hands, and just like that, Tom left. No cameras, no selfies. Just a moment between two men who understood what it meant to build something from nothing. Jack looked around his garage. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like enough. 6 months. After opening Miller's Auto, the rhythm of Jack's life had finally settled. The garage still wasn't fancy. No shiny signs, no digital kiosks. But every morning, when Jack opened the roll-up door and the Florida sun spilled across the cracked concrete, it felt like home. Grease under his nails, engine hum in the background, and Ethan's backpack swinging through the door after school. It was the life he never knew he wanted. Word of mouth had carried farther than he expected. Local delivery drivers came in regularly. A few teachers from Ethan's school. Even a retired couple who drove an hour just because they liked how he handled himself on the news. But it wasn't the attention Jack remembered most. It was the people. There was Carla, a single mom who rolled in one morning crying because her car died on the way to work. Jack fixed it, then told her to pay whenever she could. She came back a week later with a homemade casserole and tears in her eyes. There was Ray, a grumpy old Navy vet who didn't trust anyone with his truck until Jack let him stand beside him during the repair, explaining every step. By the end, Ray just nodded and said, "You're all right, kid." And then there was Ethan. He'd started spending more time at the garage, watching, asking questions, helping clean up. One Saturday afternoon, Jack caught him carefully aligning socket wrenches by size. "You thinking of taking over one day?" Jack joked. Ethan shrugged. "Maybe. You help people. I like that." That hit deeper than anything fame could offer. Rachel arrived later with iced tea and sandwiches. They sat outside on overturned crates watching the sky turn orange. "You ever think about how this all started?" she asked. Jack nodded. "Every day. Still wish you'd charged him?" He looked down at his hands, scarred, strong, steady. "No. I think that one choice showed me who I really was, even if it cost me everything for a while." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "It gave you something better." Behind them, the sign read, "Miller's Auto, honest work, no exceptions." And inside, that quiet little garage where the world had finally stopped spinning so fast, Jack Miller had found something he never expected, a life he could believe in.